My name is Lucinda Shevlin, and I'm 34. The drive up to Copper Ridge had always been my therapy. 3 hours of winding mountain roads, pine trees thick enough to swallow the noise of the world, and silence so complete you could hear your own thoughts settle into place. I needed that silence more than ever. For months, I'd been running on fumes. Product launches, late-night calls, endless decisions that weren't mine alone anymore. The company had dangled the VP position in front of me like a prize and a trap. More money, more power, less sleep, less life. So I planned this weekend like it was a rescue mission. A full digital detox. No laptop, no Slack, no pretending I could relax while my phone buzzed in my pocket like a living thing. My boyfriend Ethan kissed my forehead that morning and said, "You're not running away. You're thinking." I smiled like I believed him, but as I made the final turn onto the private road, my stomach tightened for a reason I couldn't name. Fresh tire tracks scarred the gravel. Not one set, multiple. My heartbeat climbed as the lodge came into view, and then it slammed into my ribs so hard it actually hurt. 3 cars were parked in the clearing. A silver SUV I didn't recognize, a blue sedan, and my sister Vanessa's white Range Rover, gleaming like it had every right to be there. The one our parents helped her buy 2 years ago after she cried about needing reliable transportation for the kids. Smoke curled from the chimney. Every light in the house blazed, even though it was only 4 in the afternoon. I pulled up slowly, my mind sprinting through explanations. Maybe Vanessa was here for an emergency. Maybe Mom and Dad had told her to check on the place. Maybe... No. Because Vanessa didn't do maybe. Vanessa did entitlement. I checked my phone. No missed calls, no texts. Just work emails and a Ring notification from my Denver apartment. Nothing from anyone who should have been at my lodge. The moment I stepped out of my Subaru, I heard laughter, children's voices, high and excited. The smell of barbecue drifted across the cold mountain air, and the strangest feeling hit me. Not fear, not anger yet. Disbelief. Because those voices weren't outside visiting. They were inside my house. I walked up the stone path I laid myself 3 summers ago. Each step feeling unreal, like I was watching my body move from somewhere above. Through the wide windows, I saw people crossing my living room, opening cabinets, setting plates on my table. My people in my space. I didn't knock. It was my house. I pushed the front door open, and the scene waiting inside belonged in an alternate universe. The living room wasn't filthy, but it was lived in. Toys scattered over my Persian rug, empty soda cans on my restored coffee table. My reading chair had been shoved aside to make room for a massive flat-screen TV that absolutely hadn't been there when I left in August. 3 kids I recognized as Vanessa's sprawled on the floor with controllers in their hands. Her husband, Derek, sat on my leather couch with a beer, feet up on my ottoman like he'd paid the mortgage. An older couple, Derek's parents, I assumed, occupied my dining table playing cards. And then Vanessa walked out of the kitchen, wearing an apron, my apron. The one that said, "Head Chef," a housewarming gift from my best friend, Madison. She froze when she saw me. For one beautiful second, I watched the color drain from her face. Then her expression hardened into something ugly, like she'd flipped a switch. "What do you want, parasite?" she sneered. "I'll call the police." That word hit me like ice water. Parasite. The same word she'd used since we were kids, usually when I'd achieved something she hadn't. When I got the lead in the school play, when I graduated valedictorian, when I landed my first real job. In Vanessa's world, I didn't earn things. I stole them. Something clicked inside me. Cold, clear, almost calm. "Go ahead," I said, keeping my voice level, "if you can." And I walked past her. Derek scrambled to his feet, nearly spilling his beer. His parents looked up, confused. The kids paused their game, suddenly silent in that way children get when they sense adult danger. "Lucinda, you can't just," Vanessa started, moving to block me. "Can't just what?" I turned to face her. "Walk into my own house?" "Your house?" Derek's voice cracked slightly. Van said this place was family property, that she inherited her half. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened my photos. I'd learned years ago that with Vanessa, reality wasn't enough. You needed evidence, screenshots, documents, timestamps. Growing up with someone who rewrites history does something to you. Either you start doubting yourself, or you start documenting everything. Here's the deed, I said pleasantly, holding my phone up so all of them could see. Lucinda Shevlin, sole owner purchase, May 2019. The silence that followed was exquisite. That's not... Vanessa choked. Derek's mother, a pinched woman with too much hairspray and too little patience, narrowed her eyes at Vanessa like she'd suddenly smelled something rotten. Vanessa's face went from pale to blotchy red. She's lying. Lucinda always lies. She manipulates everyone. Call the county recorder's office, I offered, still calm. They're open until 5. The property is listed under my name. Want the number? Derek pulled out his phone with shaky fingers. The kids weren't pretending anymore. They were watching with wide-eyed fascination. Children forced into adult drama because one adult couldn't behave like an adult. Ben? Derek said slowly, staring at Vanessa like he'd never seen her before. You told me your parents left you both this place. They would have, Vanessa snapped, if she hadn't manipulated them. She always does this, swoops in and steals everything. The accusation was so absurd, I actually laughed this time. I bought this property with my own money, I said. Mom and Dad didn't leave us anything because they're still alive, enjoying retirement in Arizona. Should I call them? Put them on speaker? Vanessa's jaw clenched. Her eyes flicked to Derek's parents, to the kids, to the phone in Derek's hand. She was calculating. She always was. I looked around my home, my sanctuary, the space I'd rebuilt board by board and paint coat by paint coat. How long have you been here? I asked. Nobody answered. I walked into the kitchen. Vanessa followed, sputtering protests like noise could protect her. The fridge was stuffed with groceries that weren't mine. My pantry had been raided and refilled with generic brands and sticky kid snacks. The bag of premium coffee beans I'd left nearly full was empty. My espresso machine, my one indulgence, had dried milk crusted on the wand like someone treated it like a gas station latte maker. My hands curled into fists, not because of coffee, because it was never just coffee. It was the pattern. Take first, justify later, then accuse me of cruelty for noticing. 3 weeks, Derek admitted from behind me. I turned slowly. 3 weeks, he swallowed. Van said we could stay here while our house is being renovated. She said you never come up anyway. 3 weeks, I repeated, looking straight at my sister. You've been squatting in my house for 3 weeks. It's not squatting if it's family, Vanessa shot back instantly. It's breaking and entering, I said. Trespassing, theft of utilities. My voice stayed calm, but inside me, rage built like thunder. This wasn't just about a lodge. This was about every time she borrowed my clothes and returned them ruined. Every time she called me selfish because I wouldn't give her money I'd worked for. Every time our parents begged me to be the bigger person because Vanessa would take it so hard. I'd been the bigger person so long I barely recognized myself. Derek cleared his throat, trying for a reasonable tone. Lucinda, she made a mistake. We can work this out. We're family. Family pays rent, I said. Family asks permission. Family doesn't call you a parasite in your own home. Vanessa crossed her arms. I'm not leaving. You can't make me. There it was. The dare. The moment she expected me to fold, like I always had. I didn't. I turned to Derek. Do you have a rental agreement? Anything in writing giving you permission to be here? His silence answered for him. And you've been using my electricity, my water, my gas, I continued, sleeping in beds with linens I bought, eating food I paid for. I gestured toward the empty coffee bag like it was a symbol. Fair market rate in fall season, about $400 a night. 3 weeks is 21 days. That's $8,400, plus utilities, plus food, plus cleaning fees, plus damages. Derek's face went gray. You can't charge us like a hotel, Vanessa sputtered. You're right, I said. I should charge more. Hotels don't let you drill into the wall. I pointed toward the living room where the TV mount left a constellation of holes in my cream-colored wall. That's ours, Derek said quietly. We brought it from home. Did you drill into my wall to mount it? He didn't answer, because the wall already had. Vanessa lifted her chin. This is ridiculous. I'm your sister. Then you should have asked your sister before moving into her house. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. You okay? Want me on the line? For a second, my throat tightened. Not because I needed rescuing, but because I was finally letting someone stand with me. I looked up. You get one chance. You pack everything, you leave today, and you pay me for utilities and food. Call it $3,000. I'll eat the rest because, yes, we're family. Derek looked like he might faint. We don't have that kind of money. That's why we're here, Vanessa snapped. The renovation went over budget. I nodded slowly, like I was listening to a child explain why stealing was inconvenient. Then you should have gone to a hotel or stayed with your parents. Derek's mother stiffened. Our place is too small. But mine is just fine to break into, I said, then turned back to Vanessa. You have 2 hours. I'm driving into town. When I come back, this place better be empty. Vanessa's eyes flooded with tears on cue, her lip trembling like she was auditioning. You've always hated me, she whispered. Ever since we were kids. You always had to be better than me. And now you're using this house to hurt me. The performance was flawless. And for the first time in my life, it didn't hook into me. No guilt, no panic, just clarity. I don't hate you, I said quietly, but I'm done enabling you. Her tears vanished like a trick. Her voice sharpened. You wouldn't actually call the sheriff. I stepped closer, lowered my voice, and let her hear the part I'd always swallowed. Test me. We stared at each other, years of history crashing between us like waves. Every accusation, every smear campaign, every time I'd been told to keep the peace by sacrificing myself. Then Derek's father spoke, slow and firm. Derek, he said, start packing. Vanessa spun. How dare you? How dare I? He snapped. We sold our truck to help your renovation. You told us this was arranged. You made us accomplices. Derek looked at Vanessa like she was a stranger wearing his wife's face. And that's when I knew. Her world wasn't collapsing because I yelled. It was collapsing because the truth was finally louder than her story. I walked out into the October air, hands shaking as adrenaline hit me like a wave. I got into my car, the engine rumbling beneath me like a promise. This time, I wasn't the bigger person. I was the owner, and I was done. I didn't drive far. Just 15 minutes down the mountain to Pine Creek, the kind of town with one main street, 2 diners, and a gas station that sold postcards nobody ever mailed. My hands were still shaking when I parked, adrenaline buzzing through my veins like I'd just narrowly avoided a car crash. I sat there longer than I meant to, staring at the steering wheel. I'd finally done it. I hadn't backed down. That realization felt both powerful and terrifying. Inside the diner, Rosie's, according to the faded sign, I ordered a burger and fries I barely touched. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense bun, took one look at me and said, "Family trouble?" I let out a humorless laugh. Is it that obvious? She slid a slice of apple pie onto the table without asking. Pie helps, trust me. It did, a little. By the time I drove back up the mountain, dusk had settled in. The sky was bruised purple and orange, the trees casting long shadows across the road. My heart pounded harder with every curve, bracing for what I might find. When the lodge came into view, the clearing was empty. All 3 cars were gone. I stayed in my Subaru for a full minute, staring at the house like it might lunge at me. Relief mixed with dread, because leaving didn't mean respecting. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It was cleaner than I expected. The dishes were stacked neatly by the sink. The floors had been swept, the garbage taken out. The TV was gone, leaving behind a spray of ugly holes in the wall, like scars. A folded note sat on the kitchen counter. Lucinda, I'm sorry. I genuinely didn't know. I'll send the money. Derek. No note from Vanessa. Of course not. I walked through the house slowly, cataloging everything with a detached calm that surprised me. The beds were stripped, linens shoved into the washing machine. Toothpaste dotted the bathroom mirror. Towels hung damp and wrinkled. Then I reached the master bedroom, my bedroom. My closet had been rearranged, my clothes shoved aside to make room for unfamiliar dresses, shoes crammed onto shelves that once held my boots. The dresser drawers were filled with someone else's underwear, someone else's socks, someone else's toiletries spread across my bathroom counter like they belonged there. Vanessa hadn't just stayed here, she'd moved in. The realization hit me harder than the insult, harder than the threat to call the police. This wasn't borrowing. This was erasure. She'd stepped into my life like she'd finally gotten what she'd always wanted, my space, my things, my place in the world. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. Every drawer, every moved item, every trace of occupation. Evidence. Always evidence. By the time I reached the office, my hands were steady. Someone had shoved my custom desk against the wall to make room for a gaming chair and console. Controllers sat on the surface where my laptop usually lived. My sanctuary, where I'd taken countless conference calls with mountains as my backdrop, had been turned into a playroom. They hadn't borrowed my house. They'd colonized it. As I snapped the last photo, my phone rang. Unknown number. Local area code. My stomach dropped. Hello? Miss Shevlin? This is Deputy Chen with the Summit County Sheriff's Office. Of course she'd done it. Yes, I said carefully. How can I help you, Deputy? We received a call about a property dispute at your address. I closed my eyes for half a second. I'm the property owner. I have documentation if you need. That won't be necessary, he interrupted. We pulled the property records when the call came in. The caller, Vanessa Patterson, claimed you were trespassing on family property. When we informed her that you're the sole owner on record, she became uncooperative. A smile tugged at my mouth before I could stop it. What happened? She insisted we arrest you for harassment. When my colleague explained that asking someone to leave your own property isn't harassment, she demanded a supervisor. Then she claimed you obtained the property through fraud. I exhaled slowly. Is that so? Ma'am, he said, voice dry. Is your sister always like this? Unfortunately, yes. Well, she's been warned that filing false police reports is a crime. I'm calling as a courtesy to let you know the situation's been handled. We have your complaint about unauthorized occupancy on file if you need it for civil proceedings. Thank you, Deputy. I appreciate it. He paused. For what it's worth, I cut off a sibling like that 5 years ago. Best decision I ever made. The line went dead. I sat down on the porch steps, watching the last of the sunset bleed into the mountains. The air had a sharp bite now, promising frost by morning. Somewhere in the distance, an elk bugled, a haunting, lonely sound that echoed across the valley. This place had been my dream. Growing up, we never had money for vacations. Vanessa hated that. Hated thrift stores, hated hand-me-downs, hated the way I seemed to accept things as they were. I worked 3 jobs through college, lived with roommates long after I could afford not to, saved obsessively. When my company went public and my stock options finally paid off, this lodge was the first thing I bought purely for joy. I'd renovated it myself, learned to tile, refinish floors, install fixtures. Friends helped on weekends. Every board, every coat of paint, every carefully chosen piece of furniture meant something, and she'd tried to take it. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Lucinda, she said without preamble. Vanessa just called me. She's very upset. Here we go. She says you kicked her out of the family lodge. There is no family lodge, I said calmly. There's my lodge, that I bought. Vanessa broke in without permission and stayed for 3 weeks. Broke in? Mom hesitated. She said you gave her a key. I gave her an emergency key years ago. This wasn't an emergency. She lied to her husband and his parents, drilled holes in my walls, and called me a parasite. Silence stretched on the line. She didn't tell me that part, Mom said quietly. 3 weeks, Mom. Using my utilities, my food, my things. Another pause, longer this time. Oh, Lucinda, she finally said. Your father and I, we'll talk to her. This isn't okay. I'm tired of being told to let things go because that's just how she is. You're right, Mom admitted, her voice cracking. We haven't been fair to you. We always asked you to be the understanding one because you could handle it. That wasn't right. The acknowledgement hit me unexpectedly hard. Did you really charge her money? She asked gently. Fair market value would have been over $8,000. I gave her a discount. Mom surprised me by laughing. Good for you. After we hung up, I did the thing I'd planned not to do all weekend. I opened my laptop. I ordered real security cameras, scheduled installation, booked a locksmith for a full rekey. If this weekend had taught me anything, it was that boundaries without enforcement were just suggestions. Over the next 2 days, I patched holes, repainted walls, deep cleaned the espresso machine until it purred again. I replaced my coffee beans with an even better blend. Each small act felt like reclaiming territory. On Sunday morning, I drove into Pine Creek for supplies and ran into someone I didn't expect. Derek's mother stood outside the grocery store, bags in hand. She stopped when she saw me, her expression tight. Lucinda, she said, I owe you an apology. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She set her bags down. Can we talk? We sat on a bench watching tourists drift past antique shops. She looked older than she had 2 days ago. Vanessa fooled us, she said quietly. She showed us pictures, told us stories. We thought we were helping. What did she tell you about me? I asked. Joan winced. That you were cold, career-obsessed, that you bought this place out of spite. The lies barely stung anymore. And now? I asked. Now I've seen how you handled everything. Firm, fair. You could have called the police immediately. You didn't. She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures. Clean counters, stripped beds, Derek patching holes in my wall with a grim expression. He's filing for divorce, she added softly. That surprised me more than I expected. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. For the kids, for the mess they'd inherit. She shook her head. My son married a woman who calls her sister a parasite. That tells me everything. When she left, I sat there for a long time. Back at the lodge, my phone buzzed with a notification. A transfer, $3,000, from Derek. A message followed. I'm so sorry. I'm documenting everything. I hope you're okay. Vanessa never apologized. But as I locked my door that night, the cameras blinking quietly into place, I realized something. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for her to. The legal envelope arrived 3 days later. It was waiting for me at my Denver apartment when I got back from the mountain. Thick cream paper, a return address from a downtown law firm, my name typed neatly on the front like an accusation. For a full minute, I just stared at it. My first thought was Vanessa. Of course it was. Of course she'd escalated. I didn't open it right away. I made tea. I sat on my couch. I reminded myself to breathe. This was the old reflex, the one where my body braced for impact before my mind caught up. When I finally slid my finger under the flap, my hands were steady. Inside was not a lawsuit. It was a notarized statement confirming the $3,000 payment and releasing me from any further claims related to the unauthorized use of the property. And then, unexpectedly, a formal apology letter from Derek. It was thorough, painfully so. He took responsibility for not verifying Vanessa's claims, detailed the lies she'd told, including staged photos and a forged email, supposedly from me granting permission. He outlined steps he was taking, separating finances, consulting a lawyer, arranging counseling for the kids. The last paragraph gutted me. My children ask why they can't visit your cabin anymore. I told them the truth, that their mother lied and that lies have consequences. They're angry and confused. But I'd rather they learn this now than grow up thinking it's acceptable to treat people the way Vanessa treated you. You deserved protection. We failed you. I set the letter down and stared at the wall. This was what accountability looked like. Not tears, not excuses, not, you know how she is. Ownership. I called my therapist. I don't know what to do with this, I admitted after reading the letter aloud. It feels foreign. That's because you're used to non-apologies, Dr. Rivera said gently. Real apologies name the harm, take responsibility, and outline changed behavior. Derek did all three. So I just accept it? What do you want to do? I thought about it. I want to acknowledge it. I don't want to absolve him, and I don't want a relationship. All of those can exist in one response. We drafted a reply together. Gracious, boundaried, final. I sent it that afternoon. Derek replied once. Thank you for receiving it. That's all I hoped for. Vanessa stayed silent. That silence followed me back to the lodge a few weeks later, heavy and watchful, like the pause before a storm. I half expected her to show up, to rage, to cry, to demand something. Nothing happened. Instead, the house felt different, quieter, safer. The security cameras blinked reassuringly at each corner. The new locks clicked with a satisfying finality. I slept deeper than I had in years. Then came Thanksgiving. I invited Madison and a few friends from work, people who laughed easily, respected boundaries, and didn't treat my achievements like personal insults. We cooked too much food, played board games by the fire, and hiked to the ridge at sunrise, breath fogging in the cold. I still can't believe your sister tried to steal your house, Madison said, shaking her head. She didn't try, I replied, sipping my coffee. She tried to pretend it was already hers. Classic, Madison muttered. Rewrite reality until it sticks. She hasn't apologized, I added. Madison snorted. Of course she hasn't. She's afraid of you now. She wasn't wrong. Christmas was awkward. Vanessa barely spoke to me. Her kids didn't understand why they couldn't come to Aunt Lucinda's mountain house anymore. Derek made polite conversation, eyes apologetic whenever Vanessa left the room. But something had shifted. When Vanessa complained about money, Dad suggested financial counseling instead of offering a bailout. When she tried to paint herself as a victim, Mom redirected the conversation. Not perfectly, but enough. After the holidays, I accepted the VP position. The raise was significant, the responsibility heavier. But for the first time, I wasn't apologizing for wanting more. I also started therapy more intentionally, not because of Vanessa, but because the whole situation had forced a reckoning. I'd spent years managing other people's emotions at the expense of my own. I learned that setting boundaries wasn't cruel, that protecting my peace wasn't selfish, that sharing DNA didn't entitle someone to access. 2 months later, Mom called with an update. She admitted she's jealous of you, Mom said quietly. Says she's always felt like the family disappointment. That explains a lot, I said. She's agreed to therapy, individual therapy. I nodded, even though she couldn't see it. I hope she sticks with it. I meant that. I didn't trust it, but I hoped. Vanessa never reached out to me directly, and for the first time, that didn't feel like a loss. It felt like relief. One evening, back at the lodge, I sat by the fire with a journal, something my therapist had suggested. Not a diary, a record. October 22nd. Told Sarah I needed a week off. She approved without making me justify it. October 24th. Didn't respond to Vanessa's email claiming I ruined her life. Forwarded it to Dr. Rivera instead. October 30th. Said no without explaining myself. Small victories, but victories. A year after the confrontation, Vanessa and Derek finalized their separation. Mom told me gently, as if I'd be devastated. I felt sadness for the kids, for the mess, but also relief. Vanessa moved back in with our parents temporarily. I sent money for the kids' therapy, paid directly to the provider. I wouldn't give Vanessa cash, but I wouldn't punish children for their mother's choices. Sometimes late at night, when the lodge was quiet and snow fell thick outside, I thought about that moment in the living room. Go ahead, if you can. 4 words that changed everything. I wasn't done because I'd yelled louder. I was done because I'd stopped backing down. My phone buzzed one evening. Madison. Still alive up there? Haven't posted in 24 hours. Worried you've been eaten by a bear. I snapped a photo of my tea by the snow-dusted window and sent it back. Only thing eating me is this mystery novel. Her reply was instant. Terrible pun. Also jealous. Save me a weekend. Already blocked off the dates, I typed back. Because here's what I learned. The people who respect your boundaries are the ones who deserve access to your life. Everyone else can get a polite redirect and a recommendation for a good Airbnb. I added another log to the fire and settled deeper into my chair. Some doors are better left locked. Some properties are meant to have only one name on the deed. Mine. Spring came quietly to Copper Ridge. The snow didn't melt all at once. It loosened its grip inch by inch, retreating from the porch steps, then the path, then finally the edges of the clearing. I noticed because I was there more often now. Not hiding, not recovering, just living. The lodge wasn't an escape anymore. It was a home I chose. One afternoon in late April, I took a conference call from the deck. Sunlight warming my shoulders while patches of snow still clung stubbornly to the shade. The team listened as I outlined next quarter's strategy. Decisive, calm, unapologetic. After the call ended, my boss Sarah stayed on the line. I have to say, she said, you sound different. Different how? Grounded. You used to second guess yourself. A lot. She paused. Whatever happened with your family, I'm glad you handled it the way you did. I smiled, looking out at the trees. Me too. That was the thing no one told you about boundaries. Once you set them, everything else gets quieter. The guilt fades. The panic settles. The constant background noise of should I, am I wrong, am I being unfair, finally shuts off. Vanessa stayed mostly out of my life. She never apologized, not directly anyway. According to Mom, therapy was hard and emotional and bringing things up. Vanessa framed this like suffering instead of growth, which told me everything I needed to know. She tried once. Not with words, with a photo. She posted a picture on social media of her kids at a playground with a caption about starting over and toxic people who abandon family. No names, no tags, but everyone knew. A year ago, I would have spiraled, drafted responses in my head, wondered how to correct the narrative. This time, I closed the app because the truth didn't need defending anymore. It had receipts, witnesses, paper trails, time. At a family barbecue in early summer, Vanessa barely acknowledged me. She hovered near Mom, brittle and watchful, like someone afraid of saying the wrong thing in front of the wrong audience. When her youngest spilled juice on the patio, she snapped, sharp, sudden. Dad intervened gently. Hey, it's okay. Accidents happen. Vanessa bristled. And then, this was new, she stopped, took a breath, cleaned it up without a scene. Growth? Maybe. Or maybe just awareness. Either way, it wasn't my responsibility to supervise. Later that evening, Mom found me by the fire pit. I know things will never be what they were, she said softly, but I want you to know we see it now. What we asked of you, what we let slide. I nodded. I'm not asking you to choose sides. She shook her head. We already did. We chose accountability. That was enough. I didn't need apologies carved in stone. I needed changed behavior, and I got it. Ethan joined me at the lodge more often that summer. We hiked, cooked, did absolutely nothing productive. One night, curled together on the couch, he traced circles on my arm and said, "You know, you don't tense up when your phone buzzes anymore." I hadn't noticed, but he was right. Peace sneaks up on you like that. On the anniversary of the confrontation, I stood alone in the living room, coffee in hand, sunlight spilling across the floor exactly where the TV had once been mounted. I thought about the woman who walked through that door a year ago, heart racing, braced for a fight she'd been trained to lose. And the woman standing here now. Same house, same name on the deed. Entirely different spine. Go ahead, I whispered to the empty room, almost smiling. If you can. No one answered. No one needed to, because the lodge was quiet, because my boundaries held, because my life finally belonged to me.